Let me minimize Teams first. Shit, come on. All right, go live. All right.
All
How we
right.
doing? It's been a minute.
It's
Who are you?
been a hot minute. It's been like a month.
It's been a month.
I
And dude, it has been a
It's
month.
been a month. I'm actually on vacation, but I came off to do this. No pun intended. Simply because it's been too damn long. And how
Yes.
are you, Todd?
I'm doing well. I had some sickness issues in that month
Yeah.
and wasn't feeling great, but now I'm back. You're back. I'm just so happy
Yes.
to be here with
It's
you on
good to
this
see you.
Friday.
You are now officially a COVID antibody survivor superpower man, right? Isn't that what it is?
Yes, because I got shot number one yesterday,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then
So you had it. You've had the shot. I got the J&J
yeah,
one. So which you show up and it's not Johnson and Johnson. It's like Janssen, whatever it is. So Todd and I are like, I don't know. I'm done. You're 50% done, right?
yeah,
So
yeah. It was so frustrating. I went a whole year just like so careful, so like not seeing people, and then
yeah.
it's like right before the stupid vaccine. I get it. It was so frustrating,
And
but
Todd's like one
thankfully
of only 3 people I've seen in like 14 months where I went outside the zone. Right, he comes to me right in the contagious. We
I
were gonna do
know.
like selfie shots or something, and then we ended up not doing that, which would have been funny. That would have been like COVID buddy shots or something like
Yeah,
that. It was
yeah. Thank goodness,
okay.
man.
Well, what do we? Hey, you have a lot. I got a little this week. Um, I'm Doug. That's Todd, by the way. You're watching Office Flash Friday. We have a
Yes.
little news, a little fun stuff going on. I got some office-ish stuff, a little bit of security stuff, just kind of thinking more thoughtful security than tactical security,
Uh-huh.
and some teams for my stuff this week. What are you covering?
I have a bunch of my usual, right? Power things, right? So I got Power BI, a bunch of Power BI. I got some Power Platform, some cool AI builder stuff, COE toolkit for Power Platform. So let's dig in. My Power
Oh, the
BI
COE
stuff.
one I'm super excited about. Bart Sneary was just like, you know, it's awesome. And Bart's, the one who gets stuck doing a lot of this
Oh,
with
I know.
enterprise customers. So when he's over the moon about something, you should really, zone in on it. And so I went there too. All right, cool, man. You're up.
Yes, all right. So I have a lot of things that are going GA in this round, and some of this stuff is catch up, right, from a few weeks back, but it was worth calling out. So I'll kind of go quick. Some of it's public preview. There's a lot of GA stuff. So this is really useful. You've been able to do ODBC and Power BI reports forever. Well, guess what? You can now do them, at least in preview mode, in paginated reports. So really not much more to say about that. But if you have an ODBC source and you do paginated reports, today's your day. I love this. Visual data prep, which is like a diagram view.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why we just don't call it visual data prep. Sometimes I have some naming pokes at us this week. One we actually fixed. So I'll talk about that in a minute with data flows. But we have diagram view, which is pretty awesome. So if you haven't seen this yet, this is now in GA, right? Let me make sure I have that right. Yes, general availability in Power Query Online, where all those steps that you're used to seeing over on the right,
Yeah.
where hopefully you're maybe naming them appropriately and adding little comments. Now gives you a visual view of that. So especially when you're like joining data sets, this is super useful because that steps viewer before gave you no indication that you're like joining or really bringing functions together. Whereas this kind of shows you a lineage
Can
from end to end. And it does a really good job of showing you these steps. So I absolutely am a huge fan of this.
I actually saw something this week I meant to ask you about, and this
Yeah,
prompted me. So I'm going to diverge from topic because that's what we do sometimes, right?
please.
And someone said, "Hey, look, instead of having like a whole bunch of data sources and doing visual joins on your things, they were advocating essentially creating a super table of all of your data, like just mashing it all together, so you don't have the separate sources." And they had done like performance analysis against that compared to having a whole bunch of separate tables and the complexity of the visualization, the understanding of relationships. They're like, just
So are you sure? Like, okay, because like a week
I'm
ago it
not.
was April Fool's,
No, no,
right?
no, no.
I
Okay,
saw a post.
it,
It
it,
was an April Fool's post that was similar. So
okay. So I didn't know what day it was. It wasn't April Fool's that I saw it, but it could have been from April Fool's. But it struck me as that's a terrible idea. And if it was an April Fool's post, then I'm almost relieved because
well, I
I
was
didn't.
reading it. I was like kind of getting mad. I'm like, what is?
Okay,
No.
you know what does suck is if you have to go back in the modern world and look at the creation date of things because people can send like things can
Well,
trickle
honestly,
down, and you've
I think it
lost
was
the
a bit of a
origin
joke
date.
because it was a little too serious,
Oh,
and it felt like it was real
I was like,
recommendation.
I wanted to ask you. I was like, this is ridiculous, but I did not get it on April Fools. I had a member of my family played an amazing April Fools joke, so my shields were fully up on April Fools Day because it happened
Yeah.
at like 7 o'clock in the morning. So
Oh, you know what? We didn't. I just remembering we were gonna open with a funny tweet that I saw. I'll
oh,
kind
okay.
of
Well,
pause
when we
for
do the
a second.
transition to mine, we'll do that one. Okay,
All right. We'll tell
for
that joke
the
now.
so
All
because
right.
it's a little more officey than it is this.
Cool. Cool.
Okay, so
Uh,
if that is trickling around in universe, because I meant to ask him like this is like it's just a terrible idea. Like that was my first reaction to it, but it wasn't on April Fools, so I'm glad. All right, so if
yeah.
that is trickling around out there, don't do that. That's
See,
a
that's why you gotta be
terrible
careful
idea.
with April Fools. Like I like cute jokes, especially with kids and that kind of stuff. But like, I'm so done with April Fools, like as in general.
Well, yeah, especially if you're just gonna do one like here's how you make a database table because that if
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
all
Kind
right,
of
we'll
weird
stick with
because that
that.
stuff stays around. Right.
Yeah, and like I said, the date was definitely post. So, but
Yeah. You'll
yeah,
have to let me
around.
know if that's the one you
I guess the
saw.
cautionary notice, even if something seems like dumb, it's around April. You should go back and look at the attribution date. Go to
Yes.
Snopes, check out whether or not it's
Yeah.
it's.
Exactly. Thank goodness for Snopes.
All right, proceed.
So here's another one that's gone GA. I won't spend too much time on it. But one of the biggest leaps forward in, I've mentioned this multiple times, right? One of the biggest leaps forward in governance and Power BI and really pro curation of this stuff has been the like XMLA endpoint, which really opened up this external tools, right? So bring like using Tabular Editor and DAX Studio and ALM Toolkit and being able to launch those right from Power BI Desktop is just awesome. So that's GA. If you don't know what that is, go look at it. Um, I'm not going to spend. You know what? I'm just going to spend a couple seconds of this March update for Power BI Desktop. Um, what were some of the the advanced data selection for Azure Maps is pretty slick. Being able to like drag and drop and like lasso things is pretty cool. Radial selection. What else do we got? Small multiples hasn't been around for too long. So being able to update things like word wrap, because sometimes when it's like small multiples, like your text kind of gets small, right? So it's like you want to turn on word wrap, updating backgrounds and those kinds of things. That's awesome. We've also had like a Y constant for a while in line charts. We now have an X constant, so that's cool. Go check this out. More things are here for Power BI Desktop every month. This is a big one, right? So Power BI Premium per user is now available for purchase. This is not an April Fool's joke. This is April 2nd. So this is just such a great way to like dip your toes into premium. Not even necessarily dip your toes, depending on the size of your organization and your adoption level of Power BI. Maybe this is just the way you go for your users, right? If you're a small business or medium-sized business,
That's what I was gonna
uh,
say. If you're in the SMB space, like I got I know a couple of partners who manage like large estates of many small medium customers, and for
yeah,
them this would be like the way to
this
go.
is totally, man, absolutely.
That's a
So
growing space, by the way. We got a partner in Mini who's now up to 20,000 seats of Office 365 under management.
wow, that's really cool, man. Probably across quite a few customers,
Oh
I'm
yeah, they're
sure.
all like in the 100 to 200 seat organization, and they're just
Very
growing
cool.
like gangbusters as that segment moves in. They offer like training and assistance and tech support, maintenance. They configure all the
That's
security. So
fantastic.
there's a lot of things like that, kind of like their virtual CIO services and stuff. I mean, just an interesting little market to just kind of keep you all fresh
And the
and
thing
tuned.
with going something like that is you have the advantage of all the knowledge that person has gained across like the other 300 customers they have and the
Right, right.
best practices they're bringing to the table.
Yeah,
So
they're super efficient about it, how they go about it, and service level seems to be real high from them. So we've partnered with those guys for years.
wonderful.
Yeah.
All right. Here's my good friend Charles Webb, former St. Louis guy. A couple things. The big one I want to call out here, what's new in data flows, is I've always every time I have a conversation with a customer, like why would you use data flows? I have to explain to them some of the asset terminology. And I'm like, okay, we have this thing. It's called an entity. That's really a table, right? And now I don't have to do that anymore because we're just calling it a table. It's like, thank goodness. Thank you for some sanity here. So guess what? Tables are now called tables. And columns are now called columns. Isn't that wonderful?
That's
It's wonderful.
I,
It's the simple things in life that make me happy. So I love that. Support to read the latest CDM manifest, enhanced refresh metrics. I'm trying to get down to this one because this one's big. I spent a lot of time. I spent a lot of time having conversations with customers around, what should your data state look like, right? For both self-service, IT managed data pipelines, curated data sets, self-service, all of that kind of stuff. And one of the biggest integration points between all of the pro dev stuff on the Azure side and the Power BI stuff on the Power BI side is this ADLS Gen 2 integration, where you could potentially have a IT or analytics team driven data pipeline on the Azure side, right? Pro dev type work, and write that data out to Azure Data Lake as the common data model format, CDM. And then you can basically mount your Power BI workspace on top of that data. So you don't have to move it again. It's just there. And now that integration is generally available. So to me, like the use of data flows for reuse for your business users and even for your pro devs on the Power BI side is really lit up by this ADLS Azure, and ADLS stands for Azure Data Lake Store, by the way, integration. So it's really, really good stuff. New documentation, a bunch of stuff coming soon. So I've been talking to Charles a lot, and there's a lot in the pipeline. There's a renewed, vigor on the product team around paying attention to data flows and enhancing them, because I think a lot of people are noticing the value that it brings as far as making your data assets reusable. So a lot of exciting things coming down the pipe. All right. New sharing experience. Basically,
thank goodness. They're unifying the sharing experience. Can we just say that it will now look the same as the other sharing experiences?
Yeah, we can. We can say that. So, I mean, just this one's kind of a no-brainer, right? It's like we're all used to sharing Word documents and PowerPoints and whatever in Teams and SharePoint. So why shouldn't Power BI look the same way and kind of, as a user experience thing, just makes sense.
One of my favorite things in Office they've tuned up, and they got it fixed most places, not everywhere, is where you just grab a link to something, you paste it in, and it figures out that's a link to an Office 365 tenancy, and then it turns it into an intelligent link and says, here's the permissions, and warns you're going to grant the person sharing rights if they don't have it, or they won't be able to see it because it doesn't, or it's really coaching you through, you're sending a link, and you're going to share it, or you're not sharing it. It's just super clear.
Yes.
In the places they've fixed all those things, and they keep catching the edge use cases and sort of
And every time I have a moment like that where I'm like, hey, that was a really delightful moment, I think back to early OneDrive and how far things have come and some of those early Vision things, and it's great. It's not a negative on where we were. It's just it's so great where we are.
Yeah, I came to Microsoft heading towards 8 years ago. Think about where we were still supporting BPOS, right? Dedicated BPOS customers, if you remember that, the Business Productivity Online Suite, the precursor, and my partner that I was at before this, did a lot of that stuff. So if you think about just the evolution of these services since then and how they're coming along, and now we're heading down the roads of these industry aligned clouds, right? Where you're not going to have common data models, you're going to have these industry data models, right? So
yes.
We're just getting better aligned around, coming lower towards where customers are and their capability and the granularity. But that doesn't have the complexity. You know what I mean? And the alignment, and it requires additional expertise. And so staying current is hard. I think it's, as I was just contemplating the evolution of Power BI, how much has come. It's getting harder to stay current on everything that's in Power BI, right? So
it absolutely is.
And you're sharing that. There you go.
Oops. Okay, that was my mistake. Hopefully nothing embarrassing was there. So object level security is now GA inside of Power BI. So basically we've had row level security for quite some time, and now we have object level security, which is basically saying, hey, you're a person who should or should not see this column or this table. So that is absolutely great, and everyone needs that basically. Power BI Summit coming up. So if you want to dedicate some time later this month, April 19th to the 23rd, 100 sessions. You name your topic, right, that you want to touch on. Power BI Desktop, Report Server, Embedded, Power BI Premium. 100 sessions, there's going to be something for you. So check that out. We have some really great guests. I love Amir. He's so great, and of course Arun. All these folks are awesome and make Power BI happen. So I'm really excited to see this content come. All right, so enough of Power BI. I have two more things. I just love the improvements that have been coming to the forms processor, both in Azure, right? Because this is an API inside of Azure. It's a cognitive service, but it's also part of the Power Platform and an experience in AI Builder. So this is just so great. The way that we've made it so much easier to tag and detect and teach the AI Builder about tables. Because that's honestly like what this example is right here, this little animated GIF. That's a pretty sloppy, kind of ugly looking table, right? So you can see the person that's tagging this is teaching. It's like, okay, that's my work item. Here's my rate. Here's the quantity and amount. And just from like 3 examples, it can learn about what this table should look like. And tables are obviously very important for getting invoices and things like that. So pretty exciting stuff there. And then I promised some COE Toolkit. So one, I always like how they reintroduce the COE Toolkit, because I think this is going to be something that people are going to be discovering and adopting for many, many years. Had a great engagement with a healthcare customer just last week on this, and I'm really excited about the momentum and the things that this enables to allow people to move forward with confidence and enable their business. So one of the big things that we've added is support for Dataverse. So that's fantastic, because I'm seeing a lot of momentum there. And one other thing I wanted to call out, what was it? Oh, yes. So it enhanced reporting on metadata around environments, right? So if you're doing Azure governance, you're probably doing some type of tagging, right? And tagging enables you to do grouping, right, for your reporting. I was just noticing that YouTube is warning me that we're getting buffering, but it should be okay. But what you're allowed to do now is there's some extra metadata that you're allowed to report on inside of the COE toolkit. So if you want to do cost management and grouping of environments together for a particular department or use case or business case, whatever the case might be, you can now do that. So that's pretty exciting. So Doug, man, I went through that pretty efficiently, I think.
I'll give you some efficiency points.
All right. Well, thank you. Appreciate that. So should we tell the little funny?
Yeah. So I cut over and it kind of lines up. I changed my story alignment to line up along with this. So I don't know if you've noticed, if you look at the slide on screen, it has nothing to do and everything to do with the story. So we're getting more intelligent suggestions throughout the fabric of Office, right? And one of my personal favorite ones is Presentation Coach, which I'm going to cover in a second, right? If you haven't used it, it's fascinating. But you may have started to notice that Teams and other things are doing intelligent suggestions as you type, right? Like what your likely response is, right? And you start to type and it's just a swipe to complete the sentence. And so we were talking pre-show, and Todd caught me with one where this is an email scenario. So I'm going to pause and say, we're not talking about this. We're talking about AI intelligent services, right? And one of the ones is this new intelligent completion or response suggestion service that's built into Office and Teams. It says, just tap the button and completes the sentence for you or whatever.
Right.
Mr. Kidda, I set you up.
Yeah. So I was basically just saying the ones in Teams have been just so good, and I've used them a few times, right? Kind of like how they've been on LinkedIn. I'm sure you guys have seen those. The tweet though was hilarious, and I love the way that it's manifested in Outlook, because you start typing and then it, kind of inline fills, and you can just hit tab to autocomplete. And this person tweeted that they typed a new email and they hit S. They typed the letter S, and the suggestion was, "Sorry for the late reply." And she's like, "I feel so attacked." And I'm like, man, I think we all can relate so hard. I related so hard.
I know, just because, what else are you gonna? You start with a T. Yeah. It says thanks. Like it does. It really is. Yeah.
I thought it was just wonderful.
Like I don't. The power of artificial intelligence to learn from human behaviors. Statistically speaking, the most likely thing you are to say is sorry for the delayed response.
Sorry for the delayed response. Yeah. I think we all, that was just like a common human body.
I wonder, it really is. And I wonder if you looked at the data, if you were permitted to look at that, right. What is the percentage? What's the probability behind, how many people if they type the letter S. I mean, the model had to derive that. These are not human programmed.
sure.
They are curated, but
Sure.
they are derived from machine learning algorithms, right? Do you remember we
Yeah.
had the clutter feature that was alive in Exchange for a while that we
Oh,
eventually turned off? Because
yeah.
I was, kid you not, I was in sessions with people and they're like, you guys turn that on with no warning. That wasn't true. We did tell people in the admin center you could turn it off, but people don't like when we turn things on by default. Right?
Yep.
We like to turn things on by default, and a lot of customers like it, and some don't. And the larger you are, the less you probably like it. If we just turn things on, the smaller you are, the more you appreciate it. So it's one of these weird
Sure.
tension things. When I meet with customers by different segments,
Yeah.
it's the opinions vary. But it was super funny because people were like, "Look, we just got a memo from our executives that like all the emails they're sending to people are going directly into this clutter thing, and our CEO doesn't want the email in clutter." I'm like, "Well, it's actually a machine algorithm personalized for each user that's looking at their behaviors and only moving things into clutter that they would not normally read."
Right.
And they're like, are you saying that people aren't reading emails from our CEO? I'm like, I'm not saying anything. The machine learning algorithm is watching people's behaviors and is saying that. So maybe the problem we're trying to solve is how to make corporate communications more compelling and to get the information in the hand of our people. It's a knowledge delivery challenge, not a how do we make sure the email goes into the inbox. Because whether the emails in the inbox or in the clutter folder, it wasn't being read. And the corp comms people were like, that's a great problem for us to solve. In the meantime, can we turn off clutter? I was like, of course we can. But even if I turn it off, that doesn't fix your comms problem. Like the data says you have a challenge. And so we want to try and solve the challenge. But I'm sort of known for that. All right, so let's do a few things in my universe, shall we?
Yeah, let's do it.
Have you played with Presentation Coach?
Yeah, I have. It's awesome. It's really, really good.
It reminds me very much. When was the last time you recorded yourself giving a presentation and watched it back?
Probably when I played with Presenter Coach.
Yeah. So if you haven't played with it, it's now available on all platforms, which I think is kind of fascinating, right? And there's now three new critiques for Presentation Coach on the web.
Okay.
So it now has body language where if you keep like looking down, it'll like bust you open and say like how often you weren't paying attention. On top of it, repetitive language, crutch words, right? Right is my crutch word. It's a confirmation word I use as an affirmation with an audience. I'm aware of it, but it still busts me out all the time on top of it.
We all have them.
Yep. And then also, so there's the words you used, repetitive, right? And how to break up your language. And then pronunciation has a coach on top of it. Okay. Pacing, like the eye contact and the rest of that stuff. And then obviously the pronunciation on top of it, that you blurred these words on top of it. And then distance, if you're constantly coming and going to the camera, if I was like coming back, then people would it'll bust you on top of that. And so then it goes, hey, here's how to say the words you may have mispronounced. So anyway,
that's very cool, man.
Yeah, I'll just leave it. I think it's an interesting tool. I think everyone benefits from a tune-up once in a while to see what coaching or what repetitive crutch words or lingo has crept in to your universe. We're all, no matter how long you've been doing this, fighting the battle against that. I've been publicly speaking for decades, and I still have them, and I'll get rid of one, and a new one will creep back into my universe. And so good battle to check it out. I think this is one that most end users don't know exists out there.
Oh yeah, for sure. And frankly, I mean, it hasn't been around that long. Like, I don't know, 6-7 months.
Yeah, I know, but I think it's one of those things where you can really have some training and get out there and say, hey, look, as you're doing more and more online stuff, and this can just improve your, it's a PowerPoint presenter coach. But if you were practicing your cold open to like a conference or just to a meeting or something like that, and you wanted to tune your content up, it's super good. Even if you're only doing like a 5 or 10 minute overview to open a meeting,
honestly, when you look at the categories of things that it's suggesting, it may be. I mean, I don't think you're gonna ever beat like an expert human presenter coach, right? I mean, because there's a human aspect to this, but this is to say this is even better than nothing is not even enough.
Yeah, it's really good.
This is really good.
Very good.
Period.
I mean, for me, the pace is always a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Pace is always a challenge. It always has been. Yeah. It's the amount of information I want to deliver to people versus the rate of absorption. Always a
Well, you
challenge.
and I are both very excitable people who tend to
Yeah,
maybe
someone
talk
said
fast.
I'm a plant the flag speaker, where it's like I'm gonna plant a flag and say like, follow me, we're gonna climb this mountain together, and we're doing it right now. Like I'm more of a
Let's go.
motivational technologist, right?
Oh, you don't have your boots
Uh,
on? I don't
I don't
care.
care. Let's go. It'll be fine, right? We can do this together.
Right.
And so I like to set a vision and drive for it, and then dig into all the details that shore up underneath that vision. And I give energy into rooms and get it back. But we both know friends of ours who are sort of I call them sort of like the sort of gentle swell builders, right? They like build small waves until the water gets churned up and everybody's like, well, which way do you think we should go? Well, it would be dumb to go any other way than that way. And they don't have to spend as much mental energy to get into the room. But I feed off of an enthusiastic room, right? Like
Oh,
you know what I mean? I don't even care if it's negative energy. I just need some kind of energy. The worst thing for me is dead air. Do you know what I
the
mean?
sleepy,
Like
sleepy room. Yeah,
I'm like,
I'm with
oh
you,
my
brother.
gosh, like what, am I wasting your time? So when I used to do engagements, that was one of my biggest things. All right, so anyway, presenter coach, one of those things that we should roll through.
Love it.
Um, I'm assuming people have been tracking this. The Teams rooms on Android updates on top of that. I did want to go over a little of the what's new role since we missed it. It's been about a week on top of it. But you can now use PowerPoint Live and live reactions, right? For larger meetings. You can also do 20,000 in-person view-only broadcasts on top of it. I don't know if you saw the 20,000 concurrent meeting on top of that. And if you happen to be mobile with spotty
I mean, that's like a Taylor Swift concert,
um,
right? That's
sure.
huge. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
it's a right went right to Taylor Swift.
I mean, just come on. It's the number of people. It's a lot of people. I don't know. What should I have
I
said?
don't know.
Who would you have chosen?
I don't know. That's a great question.
See, see, don't judge me, man.
Oh, I'm just waiting for Tom. I'll send, and now I know what T-shirt to get you for a gift. So all right. So several updates. The approvals app for inline response. For Teams Room, remote device stuff. Okay, live transcription with speaker attribution.
So cool. So cool.
I've been waiting for this for stinking ever.
Yeah.
Right? Like I saw early previews of this. We did work on top of this. We did work for a customer in town where they wanted to have the stuff journaled so they could, if they were doing like a bridge for an emergency of some kind.
I remember that.
You remember that
Yeah.
whole thing? We had the speech
I do.
APIs and we were doing constant speech journaling. So we'd attach the third-party media stream by inviting this essentially a bot, and we grabbed the SIP stream. We were trying to do differentiated speaker stuff, and I was like, look, this really belongs in the service. We can only do so much, post latency, but because the service knows who's talking when, because it knows it's doing the muxing, right? And so we talked to the R&D team. This is years ago, right? And then they came back out to us, do you remember, and said, hey, we're starting to work on that functional. And so some of the people we know were involved in the early discussions and customer work around this. So it's interesting to hear something that started as a customer challenge, bubbled up to engineering, the research and development teams hit it, and then now it's built into the product. And I think it's just an
Right.
amazing thing to have seen. We weren't the only one to bubble it up, obviously, because otherwise if just one customer wouldn't be enough. But interesting to see that here's these early prototype work with research and development. They're like, all right, we're going to go off and work on this. And a couple years later, service.
Yep.
So meeting recaps kind of interesting. Have you seen this at all?
Yes. This is very. I love the focus here. So good.
Yeah. I mean, this is a thing, right? And we are trying to get better at the humanity of meetings. And I love where this R&D is going.
Mm-hmm.
So Meet Now, an Outlook client for Windows. So I thought that was kind
Oh,
of
I did not see
that was
that one.
kind
That's cool.
of just like overdue. I'm just gonna leave it at that. Like, of course,
Sure.
I should have a dang Meet Now button on
I mean,
top of
I've
it.
always, it's been in Teams for a while. At least for me, I don't know how long it's been in it for real, but
Yeah.
which is handy. I've used it multiple
Yep.
times.
The get a link to the meeting to do on top of
Yep.
this, and then masking
Mm-hmm.
PSTN participant phone numbers. Bypass the lobby. New
Yes.
bypass the lobby option. For people in my organization and people in my organization, trusted organizations and guests which gives you a little
I've
more
been using
flexibility.
this feature a lot lately.
Outgoing participant video in Safari. And so you got to be on a Safari version and Mac version that supports it. And then touch bar meeting controls in the on Mac, which I was happy that we're leveraging that. I mean, I know some of our head-to-head commercials make fun of it, but it is there as a device hardware effect.
What ifs?
So
I've been able to mute and unmute via touch for a while, so it's okay.
Yeah. So, but it's nice to have, if you have the real estate going around like that, it's in the bar. I don't know. So dynamic media experiences on Android, thumbs up on top of that. The live event presenter for iPad.
Yep. Oh, it's on iPad now. I didn't know that. That's very cool.
Right. So I thought that was pretty cool on top of them. For voice-enabled channeling, for call queue channeling on top of it. Survivable branch appliances. So SBAs used to be a thing back in the, because for those who don't know, I started this whole crazy Microsoft stuff. I was a law firm IT director, and we deployed the original integration of the Microsoft's then Office communication server, live communication server against Mitel for doing IP telephony, shared presence over SIP, right? The SIP remote call control specifications. So I used to code an API, and I went and started a company with some people that did nothing but unified communications consulting. So we literally, I was so amazed by what that could do in a professional services environment to allow visibility and collaboration that I approached a friend of mine and went out and said, we got to go do this. And he'd already kind of had a consulting company, so we went and built a company that did that, and that's how I got to Microsoft. We sold it, and then, that's my journey started. I believed in the power of what unified communications could do. And some of the people are out there, like Richard Brennison, who's the Link master engineer, or Skype for Business, one of the last MCMs, and still is out there. Like, he was in the company, so a whole bunch of us did all this early work. And one of the key things was, what do you do in the event you're in a disconnected state, right? And it's very complicated because the phone needs control signals and media handling, and you got to be able to route out for 911. Like, it's not trivial. There's a lot of things that go into how voice really works. If you want someone to be able to grab a phone, how do you, how much battery runtime do you need in your UPSs if you do power over Ethernet, or do you do sort of red phones on the wall? Like, there's all these nuances. How do you handle elevators and fax machines and overhead pagers? There's tons of nuances to voice. Voice is not easy. Everyone thinks it's super easy, and the commodity, the 90th percentile of voice is, but the 10% ain't. And so these kind of scenarios around survivable branch appliances really start to address the more nuanced things when you're outside of the corp office, right? When you're at this location, but you need it to roll for a period of time. You can't have dial tone go away because they got to be able to place orders or call suppliers or deal with something. Think of like a construction site trailer. If it's got to be survivable in the event the corp connection is offline for some reason. Maybe they have local lines pulled in, right, in order to do that. So there's a lot of different things that voice requires, and this just expands on top of that stuff. There's some more cool device announcements and announcements on top of that. Android on-demand chat translation, I thought was pretty cool. 250 gig file support and Teams on top of it. The Viva stuff got moved in on top of it. And a lot more of that, insights and everything. Teams really is becoming that desktop collaboration hub, right? Where all these things are brought together. I think it'll be interesting to see what they end up doing with the left rail UI and how that extends, because it's becoming much more dynamic, and there's so many more applications being used in the context of collaboration on top of that stuff, right? Now you can add Teams into a SharePoint site, so you can pin resources as tabs and teams on top of it. 10,000 users in an org-wide team. I think you're bordering on breaking the metaphor between community and team.
Yep.
But so be careful, but understand that. The out-of-office wizard stuff's getting better on top of it. And then the history menu in Teams also displays the Teams desktop client visits location when you're looking for backward and forward, so you kind of get your history from your other client endpoints, if that makes sense. Yeah, so if you're awesome. I was in that other channel or that other team, you were trying to scroll on your mobile and find out what that team you were just chatting with someone in.
Very cool. That's
right.
Awesome.
So you got a little of that going on top of it. The new APIs for Power Platform for on top of it that are reduced in the Teams JavaScript client. So I don't know if you saw that one. Like we're directly inside. We haven't left the container, if you will, and the QR and barcode scanner is now functional as an app service within. So the player within Teams, if you will, the Power Platform player is getting more robust from a integration standpoint. And then obviously a whole bunch of management for restricting Windows and Mac to the same team clients, just a ton of stuff on top of things for over security and compliance, you name it. So it's been a huge evolution of this platform. No. And so, you look at the evolution of what's happening in Power BI. So I think the lesson I would say to this is you should be prepared for this to be a platform. And if you're still thinking of Teams as a collaboration environment, my biggest takeaway from the last probably 3 or 4 months would be you need to think of it as a collaboration platform, not a software component in and of itself. Like it's going to be woven in. It's a reality thing. Yeah, but I still have people who are like, well, we're keeping it in this box. It's our platform. It's not going to stay in that box. It simply can't. Okay, I'm going to only do one very, very brief security thing because I know we're over. It's been a month. People can, can survive with us on top of it. And I hope I didn't close it down. I might have. Yeah, I did. Okay, so there is one security announcement out there, and I'll put it in the notes so you can, send it out or people just go look it up. But if you go to the Microsoft Secure blog, I'm just going to transition to video and find it real quick because I think we're already over. If you got 2 more minutes. All right, so we're going to go to vid both while I pull this up. So there was one discussion about an emerging kind of attack, and I did want to sort of just talk a little bit about what you should be thinking about and doing in regards to that. On top of it, you ever notice how hard it is to like pull something up, search for something, and keep a background talk track?
I've done not just
rolling on top of it.
You're unfortunately are pretty single-threaded.
Yeah. Are you still getting buffering at all, or no?
It's pretty bad, actually. Yeah. So hopefully, I honestly like my.
Well, I'm seeing the send out right at full frame rate to it, but well, we'll see. So on top of it, all right. So I'm gonna cut back and we'll go over on top of it. I really just wanted to talk about firmware attacks. There's a whole bunch of firmware attacks that are on the rise.
Yes.
And this is a pretty good talking about like OS kernel as an emerging gap and how we're making the investments in what we're doing for hardware security and the features and capabilities. My comment would be this. Make sure you've activated all the features you own in order to secure firmware and do trusted boot and everything else. There's a lot of times where desktop teams, if they're having issues, one of the things they'll do, remember the old days, you'd be like, oh, I'm going to turn off like antivirus the minute I have any kind of problem on the machine. I'm going to turn off these different capabilities. There are still teams that turn them off during testing in order to establish like baseline or for ease of recovery and use, because managing against a secure, trusted boot environment does require a larger overhead, particularly when you're doing some early development and you're doing rapid, management tasks and you're just constantly prototyping against what your desktop environments look like. I don't disagree. There is an overhead to that. My point is we have to get good at that overhead. There are processes and procedures that let you do it for most scenarios. If you do have testing scenarios you have to do when you're out of that, make sure your final scenarios reactivate those capabilities, right? Because I understand when you're in dev mode, right? It's like signing all your code. You should sign all your code no matter what stage of development you're in, but a lot of people only really sign their code when they go to ship. Right? Like with production certificates and everything else. So there's analogies to that. It's not exact, but there's analogies to that that exist in the management world. And I guess my comment to people would be, this is an emerging attack vector. We need to get ahead of it. We need to pay attention to it. We need to talk about our hardware standards. Make sure the most vulnerable machines and people who are going to be the most attacked have all the right features turned on. So don't forget, we don't put like super suppression tools in every room in our building. We use water in a lot, and we use super suppression in data centers, right? So so the same analogy can hold true to here. You can use data to identify your most vulnerable population for these kinds of attacks, and then make sure you've activated the features and capabilities and the hardware needs to match. So start thinking about how you're going to be doing your firmware defense if you aren't already. All right.
Very
Well, I have
good.
no idea the quality of the stream at this point, but we did at least get on the air